Welcome back to the news, everyone. Today is going to be fun because our friends at Ubisoft have managed to step in their own landmine. You see, here's the thing that's going on. Gaming is hooked on a new drug, and that drug is paid for advanced access. Most large budget games seem to have it now, and it's almost always targeted at that pre-release weekend, because what would you rather do? Would you rather play a new game all weekend just like how you used to when you were a kid? Or would you rather play during the week when you got chores, responsibilities, when your time's precious and you're more likely to be distracted and therefore enjoy your game less? I think for most of us the answer's obvious, and that's why so many companies are doing this. So this week we've seen Ubisoft enter a bit of a nightmare scenario. We've seen Blizzard pull off the same thing with Warcraft, and even the most exciting consumer-friendly looking games are also unable to resist the clear allure of what is clearly as good as just free money. And it's a shame because controversial noise like this crowds out the pure and simple enjoyment of our hobby, and they're going to pay the bills of today's sponsor. Boot.dev/Bellular News, who exists to teach you back-end development using Python and Go, and to solve the problem of tutorial hell, where you find yourself, and I've been there before as well, aimlessly wandering around random tutorials, random Stack Overflow posts, and you just end up being scattered and confused. Well, with Boot, you follow a structured learning path rooted in the fundamentals by pros, and at boot.dev/Bellular News, you get 25% off your first purchase. Now, they have got a wealth of content, but the thing that I think's cool is they're always growing. As an example, they have launched Learn Git Part 2, and believe me, getting good is really important, right? That will save you many headaches as a developer. And to show how they keep on growing, you can just look at the monthly patch notes. I mean, now you can restart progress on a course if you just want a fresh start on it. They've overhauled their Golang course, and they're working in the likes of memory management in C, brings me back to uni, and fun things like making asteroids, I suppose, for the bands. What they do, though, is they take you from fundamentals right through to advanced topics, and done by people who are pros in back-end development. And beyond writing code, you'll also find that your abstract thinking skills and some of your confidence are built up with this kind of work as well. So to get started, go to boot.dev/Bellular News. There, you can use the code Bellular News for 25% off your first purchase, and that is backed by their no questions asked 30-day money-back guarantee. And you can just go and look at the free demos they've got for all of their courses as well. They're terrific. Thanks to them for sponsoring. Let's go. Let's kick things off with Star Wars then. So over in the PS5, some players during the advanced access period found that they could run into progression blocking bugs, and these would just leave them stranded in space. So that obviously sucks, and to have that happen during the advanced access period is especially bad. That's for a few reasons. I mean, that's something that you're paying for at a premium, either via getting the Ubisoft premium subscription service or via the gold or ultimate editions of the game. I believe the gold edition of the game was like 90-something pounds in the UK, so a hell of a lot of money, and when you're paying that amount of money, you do expect some sort of premium experience, not having lots of bugs. And that actually gets to a funny thing. Often whenever people are reviewing a video game, what they find is way more bugs than the build that actually comes out. This can be especially bad whenever reviewers aren't given enough time to review a game, and that can be especially rough, of course, if you're talking about a fairly long Ubisoft game like this one. Of course, though, that reviewer experience of, I'm writing a review and I don't know whether things will be fixed by the day one patch. That's now an experience that you can pay more money for because the industry's awesome. So what happened is these PS5 players found themselves having progression blocking bugs, and then there's been an update. And Ubisoft sent an email to some of those customers. I'm just going to read out the email. To best experience the Outer Rim, we've rolled out maintenance to make sure everyone's playing the latest version of the game. As one of the players affected who had access to an older version of the game, Ubisoft, you might want to reword that, who we sold access to an older version of the game to, we're aware you might be encountering some issues after the recent patch. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused. Once you've confirmed you have the latest version, please start a new save to fully enjoy Star Wars Outlaws. Yes, they've basically said, okay, so we've patched your game, and that's bricked your save, and you need to start a new save in order to have a good experience. By the way, we sold this experience to you for more money. And they go on to say that if you continue in the prior save, you will ultimately experience some issues and progression blockers. So this is absolutely terrible, and the way that this can be facilitated is you've got to sign into Ubisoft in order to actually play the game, and that means they've got a direct way to communicate with their players, which means they can do something like this. Now, of course, being aware of the inconvenience caused, Ubisoft have decided to make good with a follow-up offer. Here's what they said in a follow-up email. We fully acknowledge that asking you to start a new game is not the best experience. That's one way of putting it, especially during the early access period, and for that, we apologize. And just to be clear here, and I know I keep on interrupting Ubisoft's email, how rude of me. Here's the thing, even if you put 5 or 10 hours into the game, this absolutely sucks. So imagine putting 20 hours into a game that you paid advanced access for, and then they basically say, sorry, you've just got to start again. Like, for a lot of people, they're not going to spend 20 hours replaying the same damn content that they just did. Now, Ubisoft do have a plan to make this right, and I'm sure you'll all be pleased about it. To make your return to the Outer Rim a little more special, we're granting you an in-game Trailblazer trinket, as well as 100 Ubisoft Connect units. Yes, 100 Ubisoft Connect units. They say that this can be redeemed for in-game rewards as an example. Now, of course, you're probably thinking what I thought. What's an Ubisoft credit? What can I redeem those for? Well, basically, you can buy in-game stuff, and you earn one Ubisoft credit unit, or whatever they're called, whenever you spend $1 on the store. So this is $100 worth of credits. And as an example, you can redeem 100 credits for 20% off a game. So this, as a make good, I think is really, really, really bad. Honestly, the way to do this correctly is a refund, right? Like, there should be a refund, at least for, like, the price differential that people would have paid to get the advanced access period. Ubisoft would probably say, but hey, what about all the cosmetics and other things that are in the advanced access version of the game, or maybe the season pass? I mean, I understand that, but you've really messed up people here, because, like, losing a little bit of value, I mean, sure, that's something you can deal with, but whenever you've effectively taken away people's time, right? People's time, which is a resource that you don't get back, that is extremely serious in my view. So I think this make good is honestly pretty pathetic. Like, even some store credit instead of Ubisoft units, that would have been better. Now, you might be wondering, how the hell does this happen? Because seriously, for any game dev, like, the worst thing is your patch damaging people's save data. And the fact that they've done this, and this seems to be some sort of known issue, but they haven't provided like a save game migration service, that's the thing that's really crazy to me. I understand that you could just have a really terrible time, and the only way that you can fix your game is something that will interrupt an existing save. If that's the case, why the hell are you not trying to do something so that people can migrate their save data over to a new save game or something like that? I suppose it's the sort of thing where I could say that, but engineers at Massive would probably say, sorry, it's actually way more complicated than that. And I do understand that. And maybe one of the reasons why they've not been able to do some sort of thing like that is that they had to do this before the game came out to general audiences. And that kind of cuts to what I just talked about. The idea that reviewers will often play a game, they'll have loads of bugs, and they'll be stuck in this weird position where they're writing their review, but they don't really know, like, will these bugs actually be fixed? Will the performance be better by the day one patch? They just can't really be sure. And now that's an experience that you can pay for and have your time deleted. Now, as for why this could happen, well, games are really complex. Open world games are especially complex. And I know this is not a full fat Assassin's Creed Valhalla style game. It's definitely one that is, it's quite open world. It's definitely trying to be a little more focused, which I would certainly count as being a good thing. But basically, still a complicated type of game. And in a case like this, they probably aren't able to delay things because think about their marketing. You know, all of that stuff is expensive and everything is synchronized towards the release date. Then you've got retail partners, game discs, all of that. Then you've got problems like the engineering team, who maybe are aware of this, are perhaps not in sync with higher-ups at the company. And maybe those higher-ups are just callous about this sort of problem, or it could be that for the higher-ups, they're thinking about how they're spending their budget. They're thinking about coordinating teams. And that means they could over-index the negatives of doing something to give engineering more time, because they're probably thinking about wasting time with teams and all the marketing spend that they, of course, have to have coordinated with the launch day of the game. So if they do anything to change the launch day, it could all go tits up. They're probably thinking about all of that, which means that the customer is probably not at the front of their mind. So ultimately, the main victim here is the customers. The secondary victim is the developers, who do not deserve to have their work presented in this manner and who absolutely deserve the opportunity to do things right. Who's at fault here? Well, probably the company. You see, generally speaking, QA departments do actually find the bugs. It's not really a case of, oh, QA were terrible and bugs slipped in. Very often it's that the devs don't actually have time to act on all of the bugs before launch. And in a case like this, with a game of this budget and scale, moving a release date back is extremely challenging, even though I think we can all say that probably would have been the right move. I mean, this update, like, as much as this update has caused issues, there were technical problems on PS5. Like, this is an update that does actually make the launch day experience of the game better. It's an update that people should be experiencing as their default. It's just when you start selling advanced access, funnily enough, you may still say that the official release date is your release date, but it's not, because if you've sold your game to a bunch of people such that those people are playing your game before the day one patch, then, yeah, congratulations, you've screwed people around. Now, as for Star Wars Outlaws itself, look, I don't think that this is some sort of hyper-offensive, terrible game or anything like that. It very much seems to be like the standard Ubisoft 75 out of 100, where, is it going to set the world on fire? No. Would you enjoy it if it is very much targeted towards you? Yes. So when I look at the visual presentation, some of the world, stuff like that, it does seem like it's offering up a slice of Star Wars that is way more interesting to me than many other slices of Star Wars that we've got. So I would count that as a plus. Looking around, like the characters, the alien designs, I definitely like that. The main thing that I've been disappointed in is that it seems the sort of core A plot is just a little bit underwritten. It doesn't really feel like the stakes are great. However, there are lots of good performances. It does have quite a lot of cinematic flair, and it seems that if you just want a big chunk of romping around in a Star Wars experience, that you will get that. And then the other thing that's a big bummer is the combat AI. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the videos and the screenshots of just NPCs standing around getting murdered. Stuff like that really takes you out of the game, and I mean, like playing Half-Life and some of those games from back in the day that had really, really good, like compelling enemy AI, it's just weird that it seems we've regressed. And I know that whenever you've got a game that is quite large and quite dynamic and you're not really able to tightly script everything, that it is harder to get the sense of good enemy AI in, but it does just seem that it's below par to the point where in this game it is genuinely a problem. Okay, so that's Outlaws. It's not the most offensive game in the universe for many people. They're actually going to have a really great time with it, and they probably will get a lot of value out of it. Maybe not if they, of course, got the edition that got them early access and therefore screwed them over. It seems, though, as with most of these big Ubisoft open worlds, there will be a pretty good value for the money experience, at the very least in the future, whenever this game ends up being 40 or 50% off. Because if, like, say, the track record of the Avatar game is anything to go by, this will probably be something you can pick up pretty cheap and enjoy over the Christmas holidays. So, for that, not really too bad, but for the day one experience, I don't think Ubisoft have really been able to justify their premium price point, because the AI stuff, like it does interfere with combat, the bugs that they've had, and the fact that they've messed around with their players' time. Now, this is a trend that is very much kicked off in the industry, and we've seen a similar-ish story in World of Warcraft. It's a bit of a funny one, though. So the TLDR here is, yes, there is advanced access to the War Within. Broadly speaking, the War Within has had, well, much more positive, like, early impressions. Like, it is, of course, early days, but the Delves feature does actually seem to be landing, and the core narrative is way better than anything they have done probably since Warlords of Draenor, at least talking about just the level up experience. So there's a lot of good stuff there, but whenever they launched into early access, the scaling was busted, and I really felt this. You were able to go into a dungeon at level 70 and, I mean, just completely demolish it. Like, you were overpowered to the point where it was totally ridiculous. Now, by the time you go up the levels, of course, you will get, weaker and weaker. The enemies will get stronger, and that does kind of make sense if you're going into the new expansion on a totally tricked-out Dragonflight character. But the problem was, the scaling was just too much, and Blizzard have had to fix that scaling. Now, when they did that, they say that they do intend for Dragonflight-geared characters to feel overpowered initially, but basically it was more than they intended, so they're peeling it back. Now, of course, you might be thinking, oh, come on, Blizzard, why you gotta be the fun, please? Live and let live, let the people have fun. Well, the problem here is this was actually so overpowered that people were power leveling characters by inviting a level 70 to a dungeon and basically having the level 70 carry them through the dungeon, because even if you're, say, level 78, well, for that level 70, the dungeon will be scaled, and that will just mean that they will be doing absolutely insane, disproportionate amounts of damage. This is actually something that was used in loads of power leveling strategies in Mists of Pandaria Remix. So the initial thing that Blizzard did was disable freezing of XP at level 70, which would mean you just couldn't have a level 70 twink that would always be level 70 and therefore would be able to to just power level dozens of characters, but they then later announced fixes to the scaling. And those fixes went live a day and a bit after the general release. And just when I was logging into my YouTube studio over in our other account, I just saw this comment. "Rip, Bellular told the purrs about the fast leveling and then Blizzard nerfed it." And it's that sort of thing where, do I think this is anything that Blizzard intended? No, I just think their scaling was busted and this was an oversight. The problem though is, right, well, if you were there during the early access, you kind of got to make use of it. And I'm sure you all know the phrase in a lot of games, especially some like World of Warcraft, exploit early, exploit often. Well, that's the funny thing about the early access. Early access gets you in there even more early, which means you got more time to exploit early and often. So lots of people were able to power level their characters up, and for some who waited until the regular release, it does sting a little bit. Now again, I don't think this is some sort of grand evil plan to allow early access players to power level. It is, however, right? It is the sort of problem that you open yourself up to whenever you do early access. In the same way that for Ubisoft, a lot of those bugs are things that reviewers may have mentioned in their review, and they might have said, but there's a day one patch that is planned to fix these issues. Now, that's changed. That's different. And you have this terrible thing where, be it reviewers or be it a case like this, just people are getting different experiences depending on what they pay for, and that's something that is kind of messed up. And all of this, funny enough, brings me on to Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Now, it is one of the games that I have been the most excited about this year. I absolutely cannot bloody wait. I love 40k. I loved Space Marine 1. Brilliant, awesome, exciting. And that brings up the question: do I get early access for that game? Because if the question is, will this early access thing continue? I think the answer is undoubtedly yes, it will. And there are numerous reasons. I think the most obvious one is it adds a bunch of value. Of course, I put value in air quotes because what it's really doing is degrading everybody else's experience so that, you can lop off a few days and just sell that as an upcharge. So it's going to continue. But even like the take rate of this is pretty damn high. As an example, for The War Within, me and Matt did a poll in our stream, and we found that about 60% of the people who responded to that poll did actually go for the advanced access edition of the game. Then just before recording this video today, I did a Twitter poll, right? And on that poll, I had 2,000 people respond. I basically said, did you purchase the early access version? 50.5% said yes, 29.3% said no, and the remaining do not own a copy of The War Within. And what that basically tells you is way more people did get it than didn't. And I think this is something that we just see kind of across most games. Now, for a social one like World of Warcraft, I do think the advanced access will probably have a higher take rate than average, but I think you get the point. Now, to go into Space Marine 2, this is how it's priced, where the standard edition is $54.99, the gold edition is $79.99, and ultra is $89.99. And the main difference there is that pre-ordering the gold or ultra edition comes with the 4 days advanced access, the gold comes with the season pass, and the only difference with the ultra is it just has like another 10 quid cosmetic pack on it. Basically 55 quid for the regular edition and 80 for the one that has got the advanced access. That's a £25 difference, and yes, the season pass is in there. That's a season pass though, that, by the way, it is cosmetics. The way this game works is that it's its content updates in terms of gameplay are free, which I think is really, really good. And if it wasn't for the advanced access stuff, I'd be happier with things, because otherwise this game looks like it's doing so many things right. Like even just not having like premium currencies in game or an in-game shop or anything like that, where it's essentially, and this makes sense because it is the devs of the very popular World War Z game, they're basically doing a highly similar model there. So my point is that even though this is a game that is objectively doing so many more things right, that does feel way more pro-consumer as compared to, Ubisoft doing their single-player games that have got like a full live service cash shop in them, even a game like this is resorting to this tactic. And you look at the difference in price there. I mean, 25 quid is a hell of a lot of money. That is a large percentage increase from the base price of the game. And even though there is the season pass that comes with all of those cosmetics, for many, many, many people, 4 days of early access, especially when that's covering a weekend, is worth a hell of a lot of money. I mean, just think about the price of a cinema ticket or like anything for a day out, right? Like those are going to be similar enough to what you're paying here for the advanced access. So from the point of view of the company, they're basically looking at this and thinking, well, this is obviously a large objective value. People are willing to pay for it, and we're going to give you a full weekend of unparalleled entertainment, which is way more cost competitive than like going to the cinema or doing something, outside of your computer. that's why this is basically going to continue. That's the deal. And it's funny because it's really all about framing. I recently saw this talk that was about the price of coffee, right? And the core idea was thinking about the price of, like an espresso capsule, where I think the guy was saying those are about 50 cents each when you math it out. And if you were to get the amount of coffee that's in one of those, but do it in the form of instant coffee, it would cost like $30, $40, $50 for a tub of instant. Now, that's of course, in a way, apples to oranges. Honestly, I'd say an espresso doesn't taste that good. Instant really doesn't taste good. But his point basically was it's all about framing, because if you were to purchase a tub of, a tub of just Nespresso coffee that was the equivalent grams of end product to just like a tub of instant, it would be so many multiples more expensive. But it's all about framing, because that's how we perceive our value. So because Nespresso is framing itself as more of a premium coffee experience, rather than you comparing it to the price of instant, you're comparing it to the price of getting coffee at a shop that's maybe £3.50, £4, something like that. So therefore, the Nespresso machine looks like it's saving you money all of the time. And I guess that's the funny thing with games and how games pricing has evolved. I think back in the day, it used to be very much like commodity product pricing. However, there's a bit of a strategy that's called price things, not based on like what you think, it's worth or what the industry standard is. Price it based on the value that you are going to be providing to your target customer. And I think when these companies do that and they compare what a week or, 4 days or whatever it is, or a weekend of advanced access, they compare that to somebody doing a cinema ticket or doing like literally anything else. And they realize, hang on a second, even though people may be angry about this and may talk about it online, they're almost certainly going to go for it, because compared to other ways they could spend their money, well, it's a whole weekend of time spent playing a game that you care about. And I think there's also another side where the gaming audience has grown up. I think the average age of gamers has increased, and that does mean that more of us have more disposable income as compared to when we were younger, and that just means they probably think there is just more money in wallets to be extracted. So that's essentially the deal. That's why this is going to keep on going. For the companies, it's higher revenue per customer, it locks people in at the higher launch price, and even though you might be getting technically a great deal on the season pass and all of those things, well, that is a great deal on RRP. And once time passes, be it 6 months, be it a year, games do not tend to sell anywhere near their RRP. So for the company, they're generating humongous value at a tiny development expense. And that means that as much as for us it sucks, for them, they're going to keep on doing it because it just makes objective short to medium term expense. Now, we can definitely have a discussion about the long term and eroding trust in customers, and certainly gaming has become a more heated, spiky space. And yeah, like tactics that do put more of a squeeze in us, they do contribute to that. But ultimately, I think this is something that is here to stay. There always has to be a new thing, because they can't do cosmetics forever. I mean, they absolutely will continue doing cosmetics forever, but we all know that the value of cosmetics has kind of went down. They used to be new and fresh, but now they're just completely standard and expected. So if cosmetics are going to be a diminishing return situation, and if paying directly for power is something that audiences will revolt and sort of boycott over to the point where it will hurt your bottom line, where the hell else are you going to get the value from? You could say from selling playable DLC, more games, more content, but when you just think about the value you can extract and the amount of money it costs to extract that value, I think this is one of the highest performance ways that companies can do it, and that's why it's going to continue, even though you probably don't like it. I certainly don't like it, but that's kind of the way things are going. So let me know, what do you think? And what do you do in a world where there's things like this that we don't like, but they work? And it doesn't really seem that any form of boycott is going to have much of an impact here, because when you look at the take rates, they're really high for this kind of transaction. So let me know what you think, and if you want to check out something next, well, I recently dove into the pretty damn giant looking success of Deadlock, so you can check that out. Have a great day, and I'll see you over there.